Namaskaram, welcome to the KYC Know Your Culture series. What are these temples and why were they built in the first place? What better place to talk about it than the city of temples, Kashi? Temples were created as energy structures. A temple is established like a person is lying, and as you progress from the entrance, the Gopuram, till the Garbhagriha, you're walking from the feet till the Sanctum Sanctorum. That's how the whole progression is. Temples became the meeting point of the microcosm, which is this human body, and the macrocosm. The Siddhas and Yogis realized that as this is, that's how that is. So they created a miniature form, energized in a certain way, that people who walk into that space can make use of this as a doorway to get in touch with the cosmic. For different purposes, different temples were built. Temples which were built for specific purposes, consecrated in a certain way, designed to serve a certain purpose. If you want wealth, you go to Vishnu Tirumala temple, for example, or you go to Lakshmi, Kolhapur, Mahalakshmi temple. If you want to get rid of your fear or any other kind of doshas you have, you go to Bhairav. And there are other specific temples, like if you have a dosha meaning there is some malefic thing that's happening in your horoscope, then you go to a Shanishwara temple if you have Saturn's influence. There were other temples which are built towards expressing gratitude. Either the king was victorious in a battle. As an expression of gratitude, he would have built this temple. Another category of temples are the village or the folk deities, which are not as grand as the other temples that we were referring to before, but they have their own specific purposes, and they are more localized in terms of their customs and traditions and their worship. From here, the transition goes into no temples, and there are forms, energy forms, which are worshipped and invoked or called for as the purpose could be. We will look at those aspects in a different video. The categories of temples in terms of architecture, in the south they are Dravidian kind, and in the north they are Nagara style. Nagara styles are the curvy linear ones with the amalaka, gooseberry seed kind of thing on the top, with the kalash. In South Indian you will have the step-by-step pyramidal structure, which has 3, 5 or even 7 colors on the top. Architecture wise, there are many other categories that the archaeologists and temple scholars, you can say, they categorize them depending upon the period in which it was built. The Gupta period, the Mauryan period, and so on. Each has their own specific styles and thing, but basically these are the two major classification, and there is a merger of these two styles which you find in the northern Karnataka belt, in the Badami, Mahakuta kind of temples, the Belur, Halebidu and Vijayanagara, Hampi temples. This is a merger from the Dravidian and the Nagara style of architecture. How is a temple being built? There is a whole elaborate system of Agama Shastra which is referred to by the Shilpis. There is a Shilpa Shastra. Recently I happened to meet a father and son who are the 5th and 6th generation. They were explaining to me how elaborate and how minute the details are gone into when it comes to constructing a temple. Right from the land where the temple has to be built, what are the parameters that needs to be looked at, the starting of the construction, on what tithi and what planetary position it has to be started. Every level of, and then the measurements, the Gopuram's measurements, the different elements of the temple, which we'll be looking at in the series, like the Gopuram, the Kalash, the Dvajastambha, the Balipedam, the Vahana, the vehicle of the deity, and the Mantapa. There are different Mantapas, and then the Garbhagriha eventually, and the Vimana, which comes on top. Each one has specific measurements for which deity this is being created. Accordingly, the measurements are also done. So once the Shilpi has finished the scaffolding, he hands it over to the priests, the Brahmins, who consecrate. Energizing process is called consecration or pratishtha. It could be a prana pratishtha, it could be a mantra pratishtha, or it could be a sankalpa pratishtha. All this is decided before the starting of the temple, and based on that the whole system, the whole temple is built. The 48 days of how the consecration, mantra pratishtha, 48 days, 24 hours non-stop, there is a chanting of certain mantras. Mantras meaning the Sanskrit chanting that happens with all the kalash and kumbham. We'll be explaining those things in subsequent KYC series. All this happens for 48 days, and then the last day, on the day of the Kumbhabhishekam, the Kalash is installed on top of the Vimana and the Gopura, and then it becomes a complete temple and it becomes the abode of the gods. This is how the whole system was developed, right from selecting the land till making it an energy center for a specific purpose and how it can be utilized by people for getting rid of their hurdles in their life and then to move on. Most of the grand temples were not just created as energy structures alone. They became the center for the community. If you look at major temples of Kashi, Ujjain, Madurai, Arunachala, first the temple was built and around that the whole city formed because they realized the significance of living around a consecrated space. Temples became the core for all the activities, cultural, art, music, dance, and even commercial purposes like small marketplaces inside the temple in the outer parikrama. Temples were the place where the culture and the life of people who lived in that city revolved around. Next time when we go to a temple, I hope that we enter the space with what kind of detailing has gone into. If you just start appreciating it, at least the physicality of it, then we can go further into the subtler aspects of the temple. Namaskar.